He learned my breathing before I learned his name. By the time I noticed, he was matching me from the other side of doors and sometimes from the hedge outside my house. I deliver light freight around Minneapolis and St. Paul. Envelopes, shoeboxes, hard plastic cases you can't open without the right bit. Mostly nights, when the freeways hollow out and the sodium lights make wet snow look metal bright. I keep cash in the console and an ice scraper under the seat. My rules are simple. Don't carry what you can't lift with one hand. Don't wait on a doorstep longer than a breath count of 30. Never argue with notes written in bold. Names and addresses in this story are changed. The miles are not. The order that started it came at 9:37 p.m. on a Sunday in January 2021. Pick up in St. Paul, drop in Bloomington, 21 miles, under 5 pounds. $260 before tips. The app was one of the smaller ones that broker swift courier work between people who didn't want FedEx and drivers who didn't ask what was in the box. The account name was Sloan. The special instructions were longer than the job. Knock twice. Step back 10 feet. Keep hands visible. No calls, no dash cam. Do not look at recipient. Pickup was a row of storage bays behind a carpet outlet off University Avenue. The keypad code popped the roll-up door. Inside smelled like cold plastic and dust. On a painted shelf sat a grey Pelican case, scuffed but clean, with a brown shoebox nested inside and a shipping label that said, "Return," as if the box was going back to where it belonged. I carried it to the passenger seat and told myself it was documents, maybe samples. A second note was taped under the lid. Knock twice, step back 10 feet, hands visible. I wasn't bothered by that. I'd done medical runs and served private paperwork. People write rules when they don't trust people. The drop was a budget motel off I-494. Exterior doors, puddles frozen like peeled paint. Room 123. Light snow ticked across the railing. I knocked twice, exactly. I stepped back 10 feet and put my hands out, feeling ridiculous the way a grown man feels ridiculous following instructions written like a parenting manual. The door didn't open. Nobody spoke. I counted my breaths, the way I always do. 1, 2, 3, and promised myself I'd leave at 30. At 22, I heard it. Someone standing just behind the door, breathing in a rhythm that pulled at mine, like they were learning it. I set the case down where a camera, if there was one, could see it. The breathing matched me for 3 more cycles. Then the seam of light under the door went darker for a second, as if a shadow leaned against it. Nothing else happened. When I returned to the car, there was an envelope on the dash I hadn't left there. The car had been locked. No glass was broken. Inside were 2 50s folded into triangles so precise the creases squeaked. The app still showed the tip as 0. Sloan, I decided, tipped in geometry. 3 nights later, Sloan pinged me again. Same pickup bay. Different drop? A back stairwell of a duplex off Lindale. 12:40-1:10 a.m. window. The new note read, "No red lights inside the vehicle. I keep a red clip light on my shifter because it preserves night vision. Nobody should know that but me." I put it in the glove box anyway. I did the knock. I did the 10-foot step. The stairwell smelled like someone had burned a match and pinched it out sulfur pressed against skin. When I got back to the car, 2 triangles waited on the dash, edges sharp enough to cut. By the 5th run, I was a regular. The rules got oddly specific. Windows down 1 inch for the whole route. Avoid tunnels even if it adds time. Stay in the right lane except to pass. Do not stop beneath overpasses unless absolutely necessary. then one that didn't fit traffic at all. If you think you're being followed, you are. Keep driving. I screenshotted that rule because it read like a threat wrapped in advice. The timestamp on the screenshot said 12:03 a.m. I hadn't started the engine yet. I saw him on a Wednesday, 3rd week of January. The drop was behind a dentist's office, loading door propped with a blue bucket. I parked under a camera because that's what I do when things begin to ride sideways. I knocked. I stepped back. On 22, a figure moved to the door and stopped with his face turned away, chin tucked like a wrestler protecting his nose. He wore clear safety glasses at night, orange foam earplugs on a plastic tether, and thin blue nitrile gloves that squeaked when he closed his hand around the case handle. There were stitches across 2 knuckles, black thread he hadn't trimmed. He didn't take the case from me. He waited for me to set it down and step back the 10 feet. When I did, he said, in a voice that sounded practiced, like lines learned without the feeling, "You take corners too soft." "Okay," I said, because what else do you say to that? I listened to my breathing to make sure it was steady. He listened too. He matched me for 3 cycles, as if he were copying it. Then he closed the door without sliding the deadbolt. Because of Sloane's rule, I unplugged my dash cam on Sloane's nights. Driving away with the camera dark bothered me more than the man did. I told myself that was good fear, aimed at the right target, the blank square where a record should be. 2 nights later, I noticed a black sedan that wasn't in my mirrors until it was, then hung where a careful driver would sit, 2 lanes back and to the left, offset so if I braked, it could slip past. No front plate. The driver sat low, shoulder line below the headrest. I changed lanes without signalling, which I hate doing, just to see if it tracked. It did. I took the next exit, then curved back on immediately. It drifted with me, not defensive, not aggressive, like we were connected by rails I couldn't see. Over the next overpass, my tie-down straps thumped once in the trunk like something shifted that shouldn't. I pulled into a gas station I use because the cameras point at the pumps. Fluorescent hum. Coffee I didn't want. Receipt paper curling in the cold. When I came back, the sedan was parked nose out across 2 spaces, engine off, windows clear of fog in 20 degrees. Either the heat was off or he had just arrived. A single triangle bill sat under my wiper. My phone buzzed with an in-app message. "Do not go to police. Keep route. Thank you, driver." The app knew where I'd pulled off. Of course it did. The car didn't move when I eased out. It didn't follow me into the block where the precinct sits either. It slid past slow and dissolved into a lane of delivery trucks. My drop that night was another motel door. The breathing was there. The burnt match smell was there. Afterward, the 2 triangles on my dash were damp at the points, like they'd been pinched with wet gloves. On the 11th run, the pin landed on a residential street in Richfield, 15 minutes from my place. The notes added a step. Knock twice, step back into the street, face away. Face away is a bigger ask than hands visible. It assumes you'll obey. I obeyed. When I turned my back, the door cracked a fraction. The case slid over the threshold. A voice behind the crack softer, not the practiced one, said, "Thank you, driver." I don't think it was a second person. It sounded like him trying on a different voice, testing keys in a lock. When I got home, my garage light didn't trip even though it always does. In the trunk, my tie-down straps were coiled differently than I keep them. The spare tire cover sat crooked. Wedged by the jack was a small grey Pelican case I didn't own. No brand sticker, no latch, only a seam like a scored line, odd. It weighed nothing. It wouldn't open. I left it in the trunk the way you leave a web in a corner, because breaking it without a plan feels like inviting whatever spun it to pick a new place. The next night, the rate jumped to $400. Pickup, same storage bay. Drop, my street. The house number in the notes was the duplex across from mine, empty since a pipe burst in December. Come alone. No passenger. I called the private dispatcher and asked them to block the account. They wrote back, different account, payment method new. They couldn't or wouldn't give me a name. 2 minutes later, the job showed as available again, and then assigned to me without my tap, like the app, and I had agreed in our sleep. I brought a friend anyway. Hoodie up, head down, no talk, exactly as I asked. We parked 2 doors up with the engine ticking. I carried the case to the duplex and knocked twice and stepped back. I faced away because part of me still wanted whatever was coming to fit the rules. My own porch light floated in the duplex window. The door didn't open. From too close, a voice said, "No passenger." Not from the door, from the hedge at my knees. That hedge separates the lawn from the sidewalk. The voice came from inside it, close and low, like someone crouched with his mouth near the leaves, using them as a filter. I turned. There was only hedge. I stepped backward into the street until my calves touched my bumper. My friend lifted a hand inside the car to show me he was still there, a shape behind glass like a sweatshirt left on a chair. 2 steps slipped out of the hedge, one softer than the other, like sock on concrete and shoe on concrete. They took the case and withdrew. Before our engine turned over, my phone buzzed with a photo. It showed my kitchen, empty and dark, the angle 3 feet off the floor as if the camera sat on the trash can lid. Timestamp, 4:22 a.m., 5 minutes earlier. I pulled my ring clips because I wanted to know how much of my fear was improv. At 3:58 a.m., a figure stood at my porch edge just outside the motion box. He didn't step onto the mat. He leaned with his head turned away, chin tucked like before, as if looking at a camera broke a rule. I was watching in live view. I held my breath. I exhaled long. He matched me with a 2-second lag. Then he set a triangle bill on the mat with the crease aligned to the grain of the wood, like the orientation matted. He didn't try the handle. He left the triangle pointing toward the street. When I opened the door later, the triangle had rotated 90 degrees and pointed at the house. I toggled my availability off and stopped taking orders. I bought a second deadbolt and wedged the back door at night. I changed my garage opener code. I plugged the red clip light back in out of spite. Sloane's jobs still popped up like a faucet that only pretends to close. I drove to the storage bays in daylight and stood where I'd stood at night. On the concrete strip between units were scuffs in a repeating pattern arcs pressed by the heel of a hand and the edge of a bill, the marks of someone practicing folding triangles on the ground. The air inside the bay smelled faintly of spent matches, though I couldn't find a scorch. At home, I took the small grey case from the trunk and set it on the counter. I ran a fingernail around the seam. It clicked open like it had been waiting for that exact pressure. Inside was nothing, just foam cut in the shape of a triangle, edges perfect, center empty. The foam held the smell of burnt matches. I pressed my thumb into the void to see if anything gave. What gave was the part of me that believed nothing had truly crossed my threshold. I moved in March. New street, new deadbolts, new garage codes I didn't write down anywhere. I still drive nights sometimes because a habit that paid the rent keeps running after you switch it off. When a black sedan settles 2 cars back and stays, I take local roads and count my breaths until a number means something. 22 is where my mouth wants to stop. At 22, I check the mirror. If the car is still there, I keep driving. If it peels off, I park under a camera and watch my porch on my phone even when nothing is happening. I sleep in fits, and in the thin part of morning, I dream about doors that open inwards at the pressure of breath. This is the part where someone expects a confession. I didn't go to the police. I didn't knock on the empty duplex in daylight. I didn't follow the triangle car into a dead end to see what he would do. I turned off a piece of my life and left it humming in a place I used to live. That reads like a confession, because it is one. When I open a new roll-up door now, a customer's bay, a loading dock, it's the air I notice first, the way it keeps the shape of the room after the room forgets itself. I listen without wanting to for the sound of someone on the other side of thin metal, training themselves on my pace. In April, a new account pinged me on the other app. Different name, same wrong pay, too much for too little. Pickup, carpet warehouse. Drop, motel with exterior doors. Notes, knock twice, step back, hands visible. The itch to accept it because it was what I knew ran under my skin like a current I could mistake for my own pulse. I declined. The job disappeared. 10 minutes later, I found a triangle under my wiper again, crease aligned to the passenger side as if indicating a lane change. I keep the triangle foam in a drawer I don't open unless I'm looking for batteries. Some nights the drawer smells like sulfur when I pass it, faint as memory. Maybe my hands remember the scent and supply it. Maybe I never left the route. In the quiet before sleep, I make a list on the back of a receipt of things I can confirm. There were bills folded into triangles. There was a man who wore safety glasses at night and stitches he didn't trim. There was a photo of my kitchen time-stamped while I was outside. The list steadies me until I add one more line. I matched my breathing to his as often as he matched his to mine. I still deliver light freight around the Twin Cities. When the freeway is empty and the sodium glare turns puddles into chrome, I take corners a little harder than I used to. I don't know if he would approve. I don't think it matters. The windows are up. The dash cam is on. If I stop under an overpass, I stop because I choose to, not because any note told me to. When the engine ticks as it cools and sounds like a match set down after it's blown out, I let it be just an engine. If I find a triangle on the dash in the morning, I'll know he learned my new address. If I don't, I'll still count to 30 at my own door and keep breathing on my own rhythm, because that's what I can lift with one hand and carry all the way inside.